So this is simultaneously one of the best and the most frustrating 5e D&D books or sets that we've had. Before we jump in though, I need to tell you that I hurt my back pretty badly 2 days ago, so if I'm a little bit more hunched over or if there are more cuts in this video than usual, that's why. I should be back to normal in a week or so, but I wanted to get this video out to you as soon as I could because I know a lot of you are curious about this set. So please bear with me this time. Now, this set comes with a main book, a secondary book, and a card set. The main book contains a treasure trove of fun content for your games, but it is organized so haphazardly that it is really easy to miss some great things and to track down what you need in the moment. And the card set has a gorgeous aesthetic, but the card quality was so inconsistent that they're having to replace a bunch of sets. The good news is that Wizards has committed to making sure that people get taken care of. I've actually had the set for a couple of months now, but I wanted to wait until we got a replacement set of cards from Wizards to show it all to you, warts and all. And thank you to Wizards for sending it our way to review. We're going to start with the book, but feel free to use that segmented timeline down below me to jump around to the parts you want to see. The book is centered around and inspired by the Deck of Many Things, the legendary magical deck of cards that your players will draw from to shape their world and their futures. And the title here, The Book of Many Things, is 100% accurate. This book has a little bit of everything, but it is divided up into sections and then thematic chapters based on each card. So for example, Chapter 6 is the Sage card, and it includes some character options, some spells, a guide for using the deck to build a character backstory, and 2 new decks, the Deck of Many More Things and the Deck of Wonder. So it's very much a hodgepodge of content just in that one chapter. But other chapters have different magic items and different character options. And then there are organizations and monsters and story prompts and role-playing guides. So the Sage chapter isn't actually about the Sage card. It just covers material about generally arcane matters. But the chapter on the Void card is about what to do when you draw the Void card. So this is a challenging book to mine for content, but generally what you do find in here is fantastic. You just never really know what you're gonna get chapter to chapter. It is not what I expected at all, to be honest. We even got a closed-door preview of the book back at Gen Con, and it's still different from what I thought it was. So come with me, if you will, as we explore the Book of Many Things. You ever just want to pull out your phone and be playing RPGs like Pathfinder with your friends? Tabletop Town brings that asynchronous play to your fingertips in a beautiful streamlined package with all the bells and whistles. Play great indie RPGs like Honey Heist, Moonlight on Rose Hill Beach, or big games like Pathfinder 2nd Edition with the newly released remastered rules. Character sheets, dice, the official rules, images, and chat are baked right in. You can even specify with a tap if you are chatting in or out of character. The app is free to use with optional purchases of official rules systems. Stop worrying about scheduling your next session and just play by post anytime you want. Download a Tabletop Town from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store today. We'll have the links in the corner or down below. The book is divided into 5 sections and 22 chapters, again, each one themed after one of the cards. Section 1 is the DM Toolbox, with information about the Deck of Many Things, its history in real life and in the game, how to use it in your campaigns without breaking them, and using the cards to generate random content. You also get some puzzles and riddles and traps and magic items. Section 2 is character creation options, but it also has some magic items, and it includes a chapter on what to do if you draw the Knight card that gives your party a new companion. Section 3 is ostensibly about astrological phenomena, but that doesn't really mean anything to us, but these 4 chapters do give us new organizations and a new zodiac. Section 4 is entitled Adventure Locations. You get several interesting places to visit, including a Sealy Market, a Dragon's Lair, where your party can acquire the Deck of Many Things, a keep that your players may spawn if they draw the Throne card, an extra-dimensional prison that they might end up in if they draw the Donjon card, and the Void. And finally, we have Section 5, Adversaries and Rivals, which focuses on monsters and NPCs. Let me just say this first. I am not going to be able to cover everything in this book. I just want to draw your attention to the best parts and help you decide if there's enough in this book to excite you to justify picking it up. Starting from the beginning, Chapter 1, The Fool. This is basically an introduction to the book and an elaborate table of contents. It also gives you a brief history of the Deck of Many Things over the various editions of D&D, and it lets us know that 2 cards have had their names changed, but not their effects. The Idiot card is now the Puzzle card, and the Vizier is now the Sage. Now, if you want to use the Deck of Many Things in your games, read Chapter 2, named after the key card, to get guidance on how to best introduce it, how to modify it to suit your needs, and how to turn something that honestly didn't historically have a lot of storytelling potential into a story-generating engine. That's probably what this book does best. It takes something that used to wreck carefully crafted stories and turns them into an item that can be a catalyst for new adventures. And depending on what kind of effect you want to have on your campaign, this chapter will help you craft a deck that will suit your needs. The chapter also turns the deck into 22 standalone magical items, and it gives you guidance if your players want to invent cards of their own to add to the deck. Real quick, reading Chapter 2 gave me the sense of something that I rarely feel when I read D&D books. It felt like the authors had the space to create whatever they wanted here. To me, most D&D books feel so tightly edited. I read a page, and I can tell that it was cut down from 3 pages to the bare minimum to fit word count. There's something about this book that feels like the writers had room to breathe, and it makes everything so much better. Moving on to Chapter 3, Balance. This chapter gives you ways to use the deck for random generation in your games. It essentially turns the deck into a tarot-style deck with various meanings. You can create card spreads to generate encounters, rewards, journeys, and more. If you see my videos on the Hit Point Press Animated or Fablemaker's tarot decks, this is quite similar. Ultimately, it turns the deck into a random story generation engine. I tend to like regular tarot decks for this purpose, since those cards have developed a ton of meaning over the years, and they're just designed from the start to tell stories, really. But I can see some folks getting really into relying on the Deck of Many Things to help them come up with ideas when they need to. I've also found that combining a tarot deck with ChatGPT is a wonderful way to create some random characters and encounters in your D&D games on the fly. I might make a video about that soon. This chapter, though, also turns the cards into cool random ways to spend inspiration points. And this pairs well with the other little book in the set that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Chapter 4 is based on the puzzle card. Go to this chapter if you want a couple of good puzzles or riddles or trap rooms to add to your adventures, and some guidance on making your own. Good stuff for those of you who like the occasional little brain burner. Chapter 5 is about the gem card. Right off the bat, I'm going to complain about a weird choice here. This chapter starts off with a table listing all the magical items in this entire book, with their rarity and what chapter they can be found in. Why isn't this table at the beginning or the end of the book where people are going to be looking for it? Who jumps to the middle of a book to find an index? Also, why are the chapter numbers given instead of the page numbers? But this chapter also gives you some advice for dealing with parties that suddenly have quite a lot of gold on their hands, and it gives you a magic item inspired by each card in the deck. A lot of them are quite powerful though, so I wouldn't just go ahead and use the entire deck to draw random loot cards. I think you really have to go through these items and see which ones make sense for your adventures. Alternatively, if you do want to do a random card draw to determine a loot item, just curate the deck before you let them draw from it to make sure they don't get items that would unbalance your game. Chapter 6 moves us into character creation options with the Rogue card. You get some more magical items, in this case new magical card decks. It also gives you your first table with, quote, heroic ties based on the cards you draw. You can use these to develop your backstory. So during character creation, your players can draw a card, let's say the Don John card. In that case, part of their backstory is that someone important to them is imprisoned, but they believe they're innocent. The first heroic ties table here is for roguelike characters, and we'll get other tables like this in the following chapters. And finally, you get advice in this chapter on what to do if someone draws the Rogue card from the Deck of Many Things, as it creates a new villain for them to face. You get a rolling table for villain motivations, some stat blocks to use, and some layer actions and regional effects for them. So a good source of information if you do want just a new villain for your campaign. Chapter 7 is the Sage. You get 3 new spells, a new feat, and another rolling table for heroic ties, this time tailored to casters. The new feat is mostly flavor, I would say. Your character becomes a cartomancer who channels their magic through cards. You gain the prestidigitation cantrip, and you can store 1 spell in a card to use later. The spells aren't anything super special here, except for maybe the 4th level necro spell, Spirit of Death, which lets you call forth an undead incorporeal ally. The main draw of this chapter, though, is that it gives you a brand new Deck of Many Things. the deck of many more things. First, you get that with all the new effects, and the cards themselves are included in the box too. It includes 44 cards, 2/3 of which are beneficial to the players drawing them. That's twice as many cards as the original deck of many things. Most of them aren't really game breaking, and of course you can mix and match with the original deck to make a deck that won't completely wreck your campaign, to kind of fit whatever you need. So a few examples of this deck: you get the elemental card that lets you become immune to a type of elemental damage. The Fey card lets you go into the Feywild. You actually get pulled into the Feywild, but that gate in this case remains open so that the whole party can follow, so you don't get split up. You have the Dragon card that gives you a Wormling pet. You can also get a flying, climbing, or swimming speed, or you can increase your walking speed, or you can increase some ability scores, learn some languages, get older, grow taller, gain magical items, learn cantrips, become petrified, fall into a hole, or summon up enemies. There's nothing super groundbreaking in this deck, but it gives you some mid-range drama when folks want to draw from the deck. The other deck is the Deck of Wonders, which uses a standard playing card deck, and it is much less impactful, with mostly temporary effects like gaining a +1 to attack rolls or saves for 8 hours, or learning a cantrip, or giving you disadvantage to initiative rolls for a little while. It's a fun deck that can add a bit of random whimsy to your games without breaking anything at all. It's too bad we don't have real cards for it though, but I'm sure someone somewhere is going to make some eventually. Chapter 8 is the Fates card. You get 2 new detailed backgrounds for characters who want to make the deck part of their backstory. One for characters whose lives were improved by the deck, or from a draw from the deck of many things, and then one whose life was ruined from a draw from it. There's another Heroic Ties table for clerics and druids and paladins this time. There are 4 more magical items tied up with the idea of fate, including a deck of cards that can transform into a very silly but very charming little 3-tiered house of cards. And you get charms or supernatural gifts based on each card in the deck. So if you have a deity who likes a little bit of randomness in their gift selection, here you go. Otherwise, just mind the list for thematic charm ideas that work for your campaign and your needs. Next up is Chapter 9, the Knight card. You get your Heroic Ties table, again for martial characters. You get 23 new magical items focused on weapons and armor, including anti-magic armor, Captain America's thrown shield, a bow that doubles as a lyre that you can enchant arrows with based on whatever song you're playing at the time, and a sword of planeswalking that can America Chavez you or subtle knife you to new planes of existence. Finally, you get narrative and gameplay advice on what to do if someone draws the actual knight card and gains a knight ally. There's also general advice about running NPCs as allies to the party, so this section of the chapter is good for almost any DM to read. There's also general advice about running NPCs as allies to the party, so this section of the chapter is really good for most any DM to read. There's also a card golem, essentially, stat block that you can use if someone draws the knight card. So it's a pretty fun little character that you can use. All right, let's see if we can speed things up here a little bit. Chapter 10 begins Section 3, and it's based on the Sun card. It introduces the Solar Bastion, a benevolent organization that protects the multiverse from the chaos that is caused by the Deck of Many Things. These organization-centered chapters are a lot of fun, really. You get lots of story hooks and HQ information with maps and locations, ways for the PCs to join the organizations or just have them as group patrons, quests that they might be sent on, and a few specific NPCs. If you're wanting to run some Deck of Many Things themed adventures or side missions, then these groups are going to be fantastic for you. The next chapter, 12, based on the Moon card, gives you the Moonstalkers, a thieves guild of evil lycanthropes who are treasure hunters, one of whom is searching for a wish spell, perhaps one granted to someone by the Deck of Many Things. Like all these organizations, they could be potential patrons or rivals, or your party can just join them. Our next group is based on the Comet card, and it introduces an apocalyptic nihilism cult called the Heralds of the Comet. In case it's not clear, you get a substantial amount of information about these groups, like 10 pages each, which is way more than we get in the books about even the big organizations like the Lord's Alliance or the Emerald Enclave. It's fantastic, and it gives you so much meat to chew on if you want to use these groups in your adventures. So to summarize, you get an organization keeping the universe safe, a thieves guild, and a death cult. That pretty much covers the range of options that you're probably going to need. Chapter 13, Star, introduces a whole new zodiac to the game, one constellation for each of the 12 different Deck of Many Things cards. They all have a nickname, a season, some mythology, an omen associated with people born under that sign, a birthstone, an associated creature, feature a color and an ability score. So, okay, for example, the Throne is also called the Everlasting. It's most prominent in mid-spring, and those born under it tend to take up leadership roles, which can of course take many forms. It's associated with the birthstone of the ruby, and dragons in the color gold, and charisma. You also get astrological events for each one that you can use whenever it's thematically appropriate in your story. For the Throne event, the resolve of law-abiding people in the region is bolstered, and rebels are emboldened to pursue their causes with vigor. Everyone in the region is mechanically temporarily immune to the frightened condition. So if you like to do some astrology-type campaign shenanigans in your game, this gives you a lot to work with. It's totally not for everyone, but some folks are really going to eat this up. This section also gives you a fun observatory location that you can add into your campaigns. Speaking of locations, the next few chapters are focused on actual places that your party can visit. You get full gazetteer sections for each one with a map and areas to visit and NPCs and activities and vendors and just some really good story hooks. Starting off with chapter 14, Jester, which gives you a Fae-based Sealy Marketplace caravan pulled through the sky by an ancient moonstone dragon who gets a unique stat block. It includes a goblin who can read your future based on draws from the deck of many things and guidance on how to do that as the DM. There are other vendors here as well, and you can play matchmaker with some people, you can try some mysterious Fae fruit, all sorts of stuff. Chapter 15 is the Throne. A character who draws the throne card from the deck of many things gets their own keep, and this chapter gives you one that you can use, Harrow Hall, a haunted old keep that the PCs are going to have to clear out, of course, in order to claim it for themselves. Of course, you can just introduce this location into any campaign that you're running. You don't need a card to summon it. The chapter introduces a little dungeon crawl with the keep itself as the main prize. I kind of wish that the keep came with some gameplay mechanics or some upgrades that they could use, but alas, I guess that was a little bit beyond the scope of this book. Chapter 16 is the Ruin card, which normally causes folks to lose a bunch of money, but here they introduce a set of actual ruins that you can explore based on the 4th edition boxed adventure Madness at Gardmore Abbey. What's great about this place is that it is a location where the players actually find a deck of many things if they don't have one already. So this is how you actually introduce the deck into your campaign, at least one of the major ways in this book. Yeah, the cards are introduced to the players in chapter 16 of this book, so be sure you make a note of that. Chapter 17 is the Donjon, where players who draw this card are shunted off. It's an extra-dimensional prison, essentially. You can use this chapter for that location, or you can just use it as a regular dungeon to adventure in. It's a spherical phantom zone prison thing that floats through the astral sea. On top of a pretty sizable and interesting dungeon here, you get advice on running a rescue mission, assuming that one member of your party drew the actual card and got separated from everyone else. And then we get to the last location chapter, chapter 18, the Void. When someone draws this card, their soul gets trapped in a remote location. The Void chapter gives us a Far Realm-inspired dungeon plane to explore to recover that last soul. It's its own little separate demi-plane. The rooms in this dungeon are each based on cards from the deck of many things, making this one a bit of a challenge to use thematically outside a deck of many things adventure, but hey, you can make it work. It also, again, gives you some options for what the players who lost their character can do to participate in this story, including offering some suggestions of alternative, temporary characters that they might use until they get their main character back. The last 4 chapters focus on adversaries. Chapter 19 is the Skull, a card which summons an avatar of death. Well, it turns out that a lot of people have been slain by drawing that card over the centuries, and they put together a little undead support group with the mission of finding and destroying all copies of the Deck of Many Things across the multiverse to stop this scourge of death. This chapter is more or less like the other organizational chapters from earlier. You can join this faction as well if you have the misfortune to die by drawing the Skull card, but otherwise it gives you a nice little group of antagonists to pursue your party once they get their hands on a deck, presumably from the ruins in chapter 16. But if you do have a character who has unfortunately been killed by drawing the Skull card, then this chapter gives you a pretty fun way to continue their story. Chapter 20 is Flames and gives us 3 new named fiends to use as antagonists in our adventures. You get stat blocks, layer information, locations, and minions. It's kind of like getting 3 big bads from the Big Bad booklets. It's pretty much like that if you've seen our videos about that. First, you get the CR22 Demon Lord Arnazzi, the caged worm whose cults target mortals to use as blood sacrifices. And next up we get the CR14 Holgaz the Tempter, a devil from the 3rd level of hell who likes to tempt mortals with ruinous boons, and you get 3 of those quote-unquote boons that you can choose from to give out to your players. All the stuff with Holgaz is kind of a blast, really. And finally you get Malaxis the Shackler, who is a CR-18 fiend, supposedly descended from one of the night hags who originally created the Yugoloths. He's most infamous for creating a bunch of cursed armaments and spreading them across the multiverse, and of course, you get a few samples of them to use in this chapter. Chapter 21 is Talons, with 8 new deck-inspired monsters, including a Fate Hag, a Harrow Hawk spawned from the beloved animal companion that dies along with its master, a CR-17 Hierophant Medusa with a lair, there's a Living Portent, there's a little card-wielding fae called a Riffler, you can also get a deck of many things from him, a Ruin Spider, a Talon Beast, and a Were Vulture, kind of cool. And chapter 22 is Uriel, and it gives us the people who were key to the creation of the Deck of Many Things to begin with, and their story. And I'm going to leave this little story for you to discover, but I'll say that it gives you even more adventure hooks and locations and meaningful discoveries and characters. So if you do want to run your own Deck of Many Things themed adventure, this little chapter is going to give you a lot to work with. Overall, I love the content in this book, but so many people are going to miss out on a lot of it because of the organizational scheme that they've decided to use. It's just so hard to find anything. I understand that what they're trying to do and theming it after each card, and it makes it really fun to read each chapter and you discover lots of new things that you weren't expecting, but it just doesn't work as a proper source book. If they were going to do this, I think they needed an appendix that summarized all the magical items in one place, and all the spells, and all the feats, and the stat blocks, and just everything. And then you could have the book, you could use it as a proper resource when you just needed to find something in a hurry. There's also a ton of content in here to help craft yourself a Deck of Many Things themed adventure with all the organizations and the NPCs and the story hooks, but I wish they had devoted a chapter to outlining what that campaign might look like for you. Give us a little help in putting all this content to use to get the most out of it. If nothing else, I hope this video will be a little bit of a reference for you to find what you need in this book, because again, the content is top tier. One other little nitpick though, I don't think the actual Deck of Many Things magic item is included anywhere in the package, so if you want to see what each card actually does when you draw it, you actually have to go back to the original Dungeon Master's Guide, which is kind of bonkers to me. But I guess it frees up word count for some of the new content. The other half of the package is, of course, the deck itself and the little guidebook that goes along with it. We're going to start off with a guidebook. It's a quite lovely little 80-page book that details each and every card in the Deck of Many Things and the Deck of Many More Things, so 66 cards altogether. Though it doesn't give you the actual gameplay effects of the cards, which again is kind of bonkers. It does give each card meaning though, like a tarot or divination card, but meaning inside the D&D universe. So for instance, the Fool card might represent a naive celestial or a silly fae, among many other things. Then the book teaches you how to draw cards and use them for various purposes, like obviously telling a fortune for your endgame characters, or generating dungeons and adventures. So I'm going to do a quick example of this using this chart here to generate a little dungeon encounter. We're starting off with the party gathers, which is what brings the group together, or where they're brought together. So we'll have this card here, and we have the aberration card, meaning that they're going to be gathering in a place where the laws of physics and magic are suspended. So let's just say that the party is pulled into a demiplane. The Adventure Begins card here is the Beast. So this gives us a person, someone who avoids the comforts of civilization and indulges in predatory attitudes. So we're going to say that this quest giver is a lycanthrope with access to this demiplane who's probably on the run from something. Our next card represents the character's journey to wherever it is they're going. In this case, we have the Book card. So this is a situation of having to glean information from written documents. So let's say the characters are going to have to do some research to find wherever it is the quest is taking them. But keep in mind, you could also have this card represent a threat they might meet along the way, or a person they encounter. It's whatever makes sense to you. But let's say that the lycanthrope pulls our party into this demiplane because he's on the run from some big bad and he wants your help in defeating it. He doesn't know where it is, so the party has to put all the clues together. And once they do, they can head off into the dungeon. And card 4 here is the entrance to wherever it is they're going, and it's our bridge card. So I think it's probably a literal bridge across a large chasm, probably with enemies underneath trying to pull them off the bridge. So let's just say that this bridge is in the 9 hells, because natural bridges over lava is always a lot of fun. So now we have to draw 3 cards to represent challenges that they're going to face inside this dungeon, which we'll say is a devil stronghold. So first we have the Reverse Campfire. Now each card has a meaning if it's drawn right side up, or a different meaning if it's drawn upside down. The Reverse Campfire can be a creature immune to exhaustion, so maybe it's an ooze or a golem, or it could be a continuously operating trap. So for our purposes, let's make it A dragon's blood ooze from Fizzbands, formed from the blood of a dragon that was slain by our big bad. Okay, next up we have a cavern card, which gives us a roper. Simple, that works, sounds good. Finally, we have our reversed celestial, which gives us a fallen celestial being. Here in the Nine Hells dungeon, so that makes a lot of sense. It's gonna be an angel that was corrupted by this big bad and then became its lieutenant. Finally, we have our guardian, who is our big bad, and our treasure, which is gonna be the loot of this adventure. For our guardian, we have the reverse comet. And we could take the person meaning from this card, which would be a person who is grieving or a person who delights in the suffering of others. And that second option, of course, makes sense in our purposes. A devil or an archdevil who hunts others for sport and has a sight set on our lycanthrope friend. And our treasure at the end is the reverse construct card, which would be an item made out of unrefined raw materials or a magic item that's useful against constructs, like a mace of smiting. So let's just use that. It's a mace of smiting. The devil has a mace of smiting on the wall over his throne. You can grab it if you beat him. So all this gives us is an outline for a short little adventure that we can run, and it's up to us to take these pieces and craft a little cohesive story out of them. But I think that was a pretty good start. So ultimately, you can use this deck to generate people or situations or creatures or treasures or traps or locations, and you can use those things as prophecies or as things they encounter along their journeys. Now the cards, and this is where the Wizards ran into a problem. We received 2 different sets of cards from Wizards of the Coast. The first one, which arrived a couple months ago, had the cards just wrapped up in little paper ribbons like this. And the second one came about 2 weeks ago, and it had the cards wrapped up in cellophane, like this. They're wrapped in cellophane. Our initial set of cards seemed to be cut just fine for us, though some people have reported miscut cards, but ours were just kind of warped. Like they've been used a lot in careless shuffling, you know? So our new wrap set doesn't seem to have that issue. I think it's protected more from the humidity. But otherwise, the contents of both sets seem to be identical. You can see an old card on the left here, which doesn't lay flat on the table, and the new one on the right, which does. Now, the cardstock that Wizards chose for these cards is kind of thin, which I think has led to some of these issues. The cards are gorgeous, though. You can see them here for yourself. I think that you might be wise to sleeve your cards when you do receive them. It is an added cost, certainly, but it'll protect them from wear and tear and the moisture, and it's that moisture that's the real killer here. You should be able to get enough sleeves for about $15. Depending on the sleeves you get, you may or may not be able to fit them back in the original box here, though I have seen some reports that the box will close barely with all the sleeve cards inside. I think Wizards might have been smart to expand the box just a little bit on the presumption that a lot of people are going to want to sleeve their cards. I know as collectors, we like to sleeve our cards. Now, of course, we have a few options out there for Deck of Many Things cards, including 2 sets from our sponsor, Hit Point Press. Here you can see a comparison of the animated Deck of Many Things, which by far has the highest cardstock quality. And you can see one from their Fable Maker's Deck of Many Things here in the middle, which has a similar cardstock to these official cards. Now keep in mind that the Hit Point Press cards only cover the official 22 Deck of Many Things cards, and not the new 44 Deck of Many More Things. Hit Point Press is a sponsor of this video, so if you would like to pick up any of their Deck of Many Things or any of the other animated decks that they have, like spell cards or tarot cards or townsfolk or conditions or more, you can check out animatedspells.com, or even better, use our links in the corner or down below so they know we sent you. But once you kind of get used to the card quality of their animated cards, it's kind of hard to go back. They're waterproof, so not only are they kind of protected from humidity, but you can just spill your drink on them and they're fine. But anyway, there is a special edition version of the official Deck of Many Things that's available at game stores only. The only difference is the external box itself and the cover of the book. The cards and everything in that separate box is all the same. The set has an MSRP of $99 and is available now. If you run into issues with your cards, Wizards has vowed that they'll make it right. It seems that Wizards has requested that the vendors who received those original damaged sets should send them back for replacement. But some people or some vendors, especially vendors who operate through Amazon, haven't done that. They just went ahead and sold the defective sets. So if you got your set from Amazon, you're more likely to have gotten an old set that's not in great shape. Wizards will be setting up a system to get your cards replaced if you do run into problems. When they have something set up, I'll provide that link for you in the video description here. And until then, just go to the Wizards of the Coast website to find more information or to request a replacement. But if you are going to pick up this set, I would probably avoid using Amazon this time. If you can get your hands on the undamaged cards, I think this is a really fun set. It's certainly not a must-buy like one of the core or expanded core rulebooks, but it brings you a lot of fun options to the table, and it really mines the depths of what you can do with a deck of cards. I might just drop these ruins into my current campaign to let my party get access to a very carefully curated deck of many things and deck of many more things and kind of see what madness unfolds. At least I have guidance now on how to get the most out of it. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and you can help me continue to make content and get better with my back by supporting our sponsors. Download Tabletop Town today on the Google Play or the Apple App Store and get yourself some great 5e decks from Hit Point Press at animatedspells.com. You can find me on social media at one of the sites over here, and please feel free to leave me any questions that you might have in the comment section below. Also, if you made it all the way to the end here, thank you so much. I like to have some fun in the comment sections with the people who come all the way to the end of my videos. So tell me down in the comments this time that the new deck of many silly things is your favorite part of this book. It doesn't exist, but let's pretend it does. And then tell me which silly card in particular was your favorite. My favorite was the ferret card. They gave me a new magical ferret companion who can pick pockets for you. What was your favorite silly card? Until next time, though, stay safe, have fun, protect your back, love each other, and I will see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.